So yeah, this is a really exciting panel. It's going to be, the topic is the future of gaming. And obviously with all of the conversations that have happened through the course of this conference so far, I think there is a lot of talk about esports, about games as a media. And I think today we're going to be diving deeper into some of these exciting things that have come out recently. I think to start off, I wanted to ask each of the panelists to give a quick introduction of themselves. I mean, Nick did a great introduction of their companies, but I think from the standpoint of what each of the panelists have done from the standpoint of their career, I would love to have a chance to hear about that. So Arthur, please start with you.
Paul. So hi, I'm Arthur Chow. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 6waves. So we founded the company about 11 years ago in Hong Kong. We started on Facebook social gaming publishing, but now we pivoted to mobile gaming in 2014. We're now very much focused in the Japanese market. In fact, in particular, the mid-core strategy games. So 1/3 out of the top 15 grossing strategy games in Japan is actually published by us, including, I think Nick said earlier, one game is actually from Tencent. So we are actually funded by Nixon. We're one of the Nixon family companies. And in terms of my background, I'm not really a true gamer. My first job is actually a banker, but I found banking a bit too boring. No offense to any bankers here. So decided to follow my passion to kind of like do technology. So did a bit of internet and Yahoo, and then now in the gaming space.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ron, please.
My name is Ron Martin, and I'm visiting today from San Francisco, where I work in our media and entertainment group for Unity Technologies. Unity's mantra right now is bringing more creators to the world, or giving the world a better opportunity for creators to share their vision. And we are creators of a platform for developing both media content and gaming. We've been around since about 2005, 2007 we were formalized, and we've had incredible successes both in mobile, console, and now in cloud. My background is computer graphics and animation. I've been working in movies, games, and in streaming media. We've had a lot of fun over the last 30 years in different companies like Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft, and I've been working in broadcast as well, so a pretty broad range of different applications.
Wonderful, thank you. Lucas.
Okay, my name is Lucas Mao. I'm from Moonton Games. We are a gaming company from Shanghai, China, and we founded this company 5 years ago. Mobile Legends is our second game title, and we launched the Mobile Legends 3 years ago. Now, every month for Mobile Legends, we have around 75 million active users every month. And mostly are in Southeast Asia area. In Indonesia, we have more than 25 million users every month. It's almost like 1 people in 10 is playing Mobile Legends. So, and on esports side, for now we have 4 esports professional leagues in the region. And this year we start our first ever franchised esports league in Indonesia. So we are very lucky and very glad to be part of the growth of esports in the area. Thank you.
Wonderful. Simon, please.
Hi, I'm Simon Davis. I'm CEO of Mighty Bear Games. So I've been in the industry for 17 years now. I've done everything from QA to music composition. I'm actually originally a professional musician. Ended up in games by accident, and then moved into design, project management, and then eventually becoming head of product, and then launching Mighty Bear. And throughout my career, I've worked for a bunch of different companies, including Ubisoft. I worked on projects for EA. I used to work for King. King then was acquired by Activision.
Yep.
And as a result of that, we went out and we spun off and we started Mighty Bear Games. So the first 9 employees of Mighty Bear actually all came together out of King, and now we're venture backed. So we got some really great big name investors, which was a good break for us. And we've been running now for just 2.5 years. As Nick mentioned, we're one of the featured developers in Arcade, and that's about as much as I can say about Arcade for now.
Well, okay, great. Exciting things. Ronnie, please.
Hey, great. Yeah. Hello, my name is Ronnie. I'm from Gumi Asia. I'm managing director. And then Gumi Asia has came a long way. It started in 2012 as a startup, just 10 people. And then we grew it to today. After we IPO, we're about 160, and we do mobile games publishing. So over the years, we have built several functionalities from game ops, user acquisition, analytics, customer support, community, and many more. And then along the way, I'm proud to train the first batch of game operations people in Singapore. And since 2012 to now, we have launched titles like Final Fantasy, Brave Exvius, Brave Frontier, Alchemist Code, and we'll continue to do so. As for myself, yes, I'm more of a gamer guy. When I was very young, about 15 or 16 years ago, I was a Nintendo DS developer. So I grew from console to mobile, and finally game operations. And yeah, this is where I am.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then for myself, I'm with Activision Blizzard. We're actually one of the largest developers, publishers in the world, well known for titles on the console side like Call of Duty, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Team Racing, as well as on the Blizzard side, which has been a PC developer and publisher for over 28 years, creating brands such as World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo, Overwatch, Hearthstone, etc. Hearthstone, which is also developed on Unity. Myself, I've been in the video game industry for 20 years. Prior to joining Activision Blizzard, I was running the Greater China business for a game company called Rovio, which is known for a game called Angry Birds that kind of started the mobile gaming sector, so to speak. So I think to kick it off, one of the first topics I wanted to divert to Ron Martin is about cloud gaming. And cloud gaming is such a hot topic now with recent announcements from Google, Microsoft, and others. What do you think, and how do you see this trend growing?
To me, there are three aspects to cloud gaming which have to be sustained in order for it to be widely accepted. First one is that it's immersive, that you don't create a barrier between the player and the platform. The second one is that we start looking towards cloud gaming as something that's accessible. That means it can be inexpensive to access, that it can be playable on different devices, that that accessibility is going to increase that user experience. And the last thing, is that it's connected. I mean, when we think about these devices, we stop calling them phones. They're actually little computers that we carry around with them. Mm-hmm. And if we can think of that as our device, our social device, our interactive device between different people that we like to enjoy these times with, then I think that it'll continue to grow. Now, the development of these platforms just don't happen overnight. There's been a lot of effort and a lot of research that's going into how they're going to be launched, and everyone wants to promise great experiences as we go into it. But we have to realize that these are the initial steps to embracing cloud gaming and cloud platforms as a very strong opportunity, and like other opportunities that will mature over time.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts on that? Maybe from the standpoint of the platforms that have been announced, like Google Stadia and so forth, do you guys see a frontline winner in this kind of race to cloud gaming?
I think one of the biggest challenges right now is the business model. So consumers expect a service where they can subscribe and get access to these games via the cloud.
Yeah.
That's not really on offer other than by Sony right now. And then you have to have a console. So I think from an economics perspective, like as a consumer, it still doesn't really make sense. And it's a controversial opinion, but as a user, you're going to go and fork out for a piece of hardware, pay for a subscription, and then buy games individually. My other big challenge for this is not every country has the internet speeds that we have in Singapore or in other parts of Asia and Korea. Like, if you especially go to rural Europe or even parts of the US, like, you're going to get the kind of internet speeds you need to make this work. So I still think it's still not quite there yet.
Okay. Ronnie, what did you?
Well, I think from his reply, if I think about it, if we look into the future, let's say a few more years, if 5G were to be more, I would say, normal to everyone. So the issue that he mentioned may be solved organically. So what happened is that if let's say everyone goes digital, I will see there'll be much more stores coming into the scene. Of course, now with Stadia, with xCloud, with many stuff coming in, so we will see like everyone fighting until when there's one store stays. So history repeats itself. Then as for monetization, whether will this be like a Netflix of games, the ideas can be explored. Subscription is one of it, or how you want to sell it. The ideas are not still fully firm yet. So every game company has a chance to experiment. But the lines will be blurred. Is it like, oh, it's just in your browser, you can play the game, or is it going to transmedia or to your phone also? So is it a mobile game or not a mobile game? Those lines will be blurred.
Blurred.
So fellow business people will think how you want to sell it. Then for gamers who consume it, is it a mobile game or not mobile game? So this is something that everyone will see as the future unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, at the end of the day, it's really about the consumer, right? How much I'm going to pay and what I'm going to get, right?
Yeah, so it's like a business model.
I pay that much and I'm getting this experience, the game that I like to play with, limited latency, and that's all. And they don't really need to think about, is it mobile or not? Or is it a device or not? It's almost like I turn on TV. I don't care whether it's satellite or set-top box or like traditional wired, right? I enjoy what I want to enjoy, and at the price that I'm acceptable. I think that's ultimately it's going to be whoever can deliver that experience to the user is going to be the winner.
Okay, well let's talk about 5G. So to Ronnie Tan, 5G. You guys do mobile gaming. Will it be a game changer for the mobile gaming industry? What is your opinion about that?
Well, yes. Actually, with 5G coming, I really love the idea because I can no need to have a reason say, oh, this download content is too big. So assume that the latency has been removed. The way we perceive games is different. A content, 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes, it came down to your phone. People don't wait. So the feeling of better content, AAA content entering your phone is normal. So when this happens, you will see that people will be more glued to their phones than before. Then after that, next evolution, we're going to have cutting-edge hardware gaming phones. Because you have a AAA content, it's accessible, your batteries are hot, the batteries are not big enough, everyone get a bigger battery. Bigger battery, smaller size, nanotech. So it actually spurs the ecosystem, evolution. So when 4G jumps to 5G, many industries get pulled in. So you grow to iteration. Then coming back to a bit more game, how you monetize, how you interact with the user, you change. If you want to have like for example, multiplayer engagement, whatever I think I couldn't do because latency, I need to turn it off, I can do. So simultaneous playing together, game modes, halfway you have a fighting kind of scenario, very real-time interaction. Then after that, you co-op, all mixed together. It's okay because it's really seamless. And how you monetize. So do I just get a bundle and I download straight away? Or actually the content is so good that subscription actually will work. So there's many things to explore. It'll be very interesting. Game designers have to reiterate their whole space. Now it's geo latency. Can you go wow? AAA is normal. So what's more than AAA? 4 A's? So these kind of things I keep thinking. So this is my take.
Simon, how about you? As an Apple Arcade developer, what are your thoughts on 5G?
We're not just an arcade developer, but as a developer, I think you made a good point that you don't have to worry about download sizes and packages. That's a big restriction, and it's something that takes a lot of our time, is making sure that there's minimal friction when people are installing a game. If you have a game that takes more than X time to download, then you see your conversion rate on the store dropping off dramatically. So from that perspective, it makes a huge difference. And also from a graphical fidelity perspective. From a design perspective, I actually don't think it makes a massive difference, because ultimately we're going to be limited by the user's devices, and not every user is in a developed country and has a cutting-edge device. So the bulk of our users are in places like Indonesia, or for one of our previous games in Thailand and Vietnam. But it doesn't matter how fast the internet is, because that these people are not buying $1,000 smartphones. So ultimately, we always benchmark against the lowest spec, and then we will allow the game to do a bit more on the higher spec devices. But what 5G basically enables us to do is to worry less about the download size, but ultimately the game itself is still going to be hamstrung by the hardware.
Okay. Well, let's stay on you for that, Simon. We're moving on to the next topic, which is VR, AR, AI. These technologies have sprung up, and cooled off recently. And is there going to be, a comeback on these? What are your thoughts on that?
You'll have to pardon the pun, but I'm going to be a bit bearish on this.
Okay.
So when it comes to AR, our perspective as a studio has always been that it's a solution in need of a problem when it comes to gaming. I'm yet to see an example of AR in gaming which is genuinely convincing. I think for industrial applications and business, it makes perfect sense. VR, the similar challenge is that I don't think the tech is there yet. Until you get the point where you have completely wireless headsets which are inexpensive and can all run off one device, and you can have 3-4 people sat around in a living room all doing VR together, right, then it'll be there. But we're still many years off being affordable and the hardware being ready. The thing that actually excites me is something that very few people are talking about, which is voice. So people talk about the next billion users of the internet, but we have hundreds of millions of users in developed countries that can't play games because either they're physically not capable because of disability of some sort, or because elderly. And actually, thanks to voice, we're making mobile devices a lot more accessible. A lot of apps are now optimizing for voice and to be controllable by voice. And the next big game design challenge is how do you reach those consumers that physically can't play games today? Because they have disposable income and they want to play games. And actually, as developers, we're doing them a disservice. So that's something that we are looking at. We're not there yet. It's a big challenge, but the technology in terms of recognition of facial gestures, so people moving with their eyes or with their voice, is getting there. Microsoft has done some really great things with the Universal Controller, which they've made open source. And that is something that genuinely excites me, is voice and kind of facial recognition to enable people that physically can't play games today to play them. And especially as populations are aging, this is going to become a more interesting game design challenge and business opportunity. And just from a moral perspective, it's something that I find actually really exciting.
Okay, wonderful. Arthur, what do you think about that? I mean, do you think, as Simon has mentioned, he hadn't seen really AR. I mean, nobody wants to make the new Pokemon Go again or whatnot? Or how do you see that as a publisher?
Yeah, so I think, a few years ago it was extremely hype. It's kind of like a pendulum, but it's kind of swung all the way back to very, very negative. I take a little bit of optimistic approach, but I think overall I kind of agree with Simon's comments that it's still too early, and I think one of the challenges is that the penetration is too low in terms of the devices. Because of that, maybe it's just too costly, or the users don't see the need to buy those hardware. We've actually once developed an AR game with Unity. It got featured by Google on the Daydream platform. So we thought, we got featured on Google in our previous games on the Google Play Store before. So we had really high hopes. But then the revenue that got generated is just a tiny amount of what we could otherwise get from our normal mobile game. So without a good business model, it's really hard for developers to continue to invest and come up with a good reason for users to buy this hardware. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem, right? So I don't still see there's this kind of big critical mass that's going to be there, but I think it's better. I think it's going to be a little bit better in the sense that whoever survived after all this funding's dried up is going to be coming to come up with some good solutions and maybe games for the users.
Okay.
We have seen a lot of growth in different areas for the use of VR and AR. A lot of the location-based entertainment that we've experienced have been wildly successful, very entertaining, but they've been in places where the theme park or the installation at the movie theater has purchased that equipment ahead of time, and then they've made that business model more accessible. Not every game that's been developed out there can be a Beat Saber or a Pokemon Go or the wizarding world of Harry Potter. There's IP that are associated with certain successes, and that immersive reality or that ability to build around a world and put someone into it is a really enthusiastically embraced way to utilize the technology, but that can't exist everywhere. Not yet.
Well, I've always heard that, from these technologies, it's always about the content, right? So, it's really about, okay, is there the, killer app when it comes to VR technologies? Or, well, AR, we had this Pokemon Go craze that was going on, but there was kind of like, it lost some steam, and I think that's where the question comes about. But let's turn our attention to esports. I think esports is a big, big topic. We've been talking about that a lot through the conference. So, Lucas, for you, esports, where do you guys see it? You guys, one of the biggest games in esports in Asia, with Mobile Legends. Obviously, congratulations on being in the Southeast Asia Games, as are Blizzard titles. But how do you see it, and where do you see it heading? How big can it actually be, from your perspective?
Okay, so esports is a pretty hot topic nowadays, and a lot of people ask us, is there a bubble in the esports industry? Yeah, is there a bubble? Is it too hot now? How is going to monetization in the future? So basically, I think for some single esports game or esports title, maybe there is a temporary bubble now. But for the whole industry, I believe it will going to very big and very huge. So the most important thing is if you look at the worldwide, globally, the next generation, they like esports very much. So in the future, I think the esports industry, the whole industry will be as big as like the soccer or the basketball industry. The whole industry. There will be several, but it's different from the soccer. There will be several different kind of games, different kind of esports game titles. Some are big, some are more popular, some are small, and maybe every 5 or 10 years, the esports games will be changed. Some game decline, some new game pop up, but for the whole industry, I think it's going to be very huge, like the soccer and the basketball.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice. Ronnie, for you, you guys have games, but they're not really an esport carved around it. But as esports is growing, are you guys looking at creating esports around some of your titles that you publish?
I see. I think for esports itself, definitely as a game company, we are excited or interested to take a piece of it. We want to create something to actually have features to compete.
Right.
But then I think maybe I'll give a reply more of the take of how I see esports, like add on to Lucas' answer, is that whether is it bubble or is it not a bubble, it all depends on it has to come to build an ecosystem. Yep. Once the ecosystem is built, then it's not a bubble. So how do I illustrate this? From education. Example, in US, University of California, Irvine, there's an esports course.
Yes.
Then near Singapore, in Malaysia, there's Academy of Esports.
Yes.
So when education comes, they build something to support the start of the ecosystem. You have players who come in and join decent competition.
Yep.
So we have esports in our SEA Games. And then eventually it will go on to Olympics in the future. After that, massive competition, which you are expert at holding them, people will come, the crowd will come, and then vendors, merchants from different verticals will use this as a channel to do marketing. So sponsorships will grow.
Yep.
When all this come, investors will feel the heart throbbing. Let me put some money in. And the whole thing just iterates. If this works, you will see an ecosystem. Then it will be here to stay. Then in future, let's say I give it another 6-7 years, if it should work into an ecosystem, You can be selling jewelry, you can be in music, you can be doing anything. You need to do some marketing. Esports is part of your campaign to do marketing. So that's where truly the ecosystem stays. Then as for me as a game company, yeah, of course I should keep thinking of whether my game should have a competitive feature to put in esports. Why not? Right. So the whole ecosystem gels.
Yeah. The one thing that throughout the conference we've been listening to is the monetization, the branding, the partnerships, the things that we're bringing into the esports community. But one thing that nobody's brought up yet is the incredibly creative people, the developers that are making the content.
Yep.
Like, these things are fun to play, and that's the main driver behind why they have become competitive.
I think you just nailed it. So I don't think you can go out with the intention of creating an esports title.
No.
There are some very well-funded examples of this that didn't pan out.
Sure.
So we probably know who we're talking about. But you have to create an awesome game that people love, and you need to put competition at the core of the game. But ultimately, the best form of user acquisition is great game design. And if enough people are playing your game and loving it, and you have strong social features, you can build an ecosystem around that. But I don't think you can design with esports in mind. I think what Moonton did was to create a great MOBA on mobile that people really wanted to play, and built a strong community as a result of that.
Yeah. Just to end on that, I think the key is not just only people want to play, but more importantly is people want to watch. I think if you look at all the sports, right?
Viewership is a big component.
Viewership is very key, and you look at the more recent kind of esports finals, you have more viewership than an NBA final.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Anyone got a kid at home? I got an 11-year-old kid. He can spend the whole day watching YouTube, people playing games. He's not asking to play, but he just wants to watch
them play.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think one key driver is the viewership.
Absolutely.
In order for a game to be very successful.
Right. Definitely. So to add on top of that, what everybody's discussed, of course, is not only the competitive aspect of the game, the tuning of the gameplay, but also the fact that it's fun to watch. And that's what really comprises the major esports. But now a lot of brands are wanting to start getting in on the action. So that kind of it's a good lead into my next question that'll be directed to you, Arthur. Is so brands, and especially on the non-endemic side, which are non-gaming brands and IP, they want to get into the game. And so what's the best way for them to work with game companies such as yourself in partnering up and leveraging that? Maybe we can start with you and open up to the rest of the panelists.
I think for brand owners, they should have an open mind and see how they could actually attract the audience, typically the younger audience, right? So some of the good examples is how Marvel worked with Kabam and create the Contest of Champions. It's a very, very popular, successful game in the West. And you guys also mentioned earlier in Niantic, they had a game called Ingress earlier. I don't think anyone knows about this game. It's a location-based game, but they worked with Pokemon and created Pokemon Go and become a global phenomenon. So I think for IP and brand owners, you have to think about your brand values and how would that sync up with the gameplay, which is very important. I think Pokemon Go is a great IP to go with that gameplay because you just go around and catch your Pokemons and you go to gyms and all that, and you fight other trainers. It's a great example on how you can actually create a new kind of game. Well, it's the same gameplay, but it's just kind of a new experience for a lot of fans who may not be a gamer, but a Pokemon fan, right? They used to grow up watching all this animation and all that. So I think the other thing that I would ask the brand owners to really think about is in terms of the business model, right? And a lot of IP owners they still think about my IP is so valuable, right? You have to work deal with you. I have to get an MG of X million of dollars, and I think that will limit a lot of opportunities. And a lot of developers, they're very creative in terms of how they actually they understand the gameplay and the users' kind of behavior. Yes. But if a brand is willing to work with them without charging a high amount upfront, I think there's just going to be a lot more opportunities. And maybe at the end, with a good business structure, the IP owner can also kind of benefit from the cooperation.
Okay.
There's something else I think. Excuse me. The opportunity, again, to your point earlier about streaming and watching these games, we continue to look at the mode or the way that streamers and game developers are tying people together throughout the process. It becomes like a broadcast. At Unity, we've created something called Cinecast, which is actually an AI camera system that when you're developing your game, you can build Cinecast into the process by which cameras can be placed by a third party of the game developer while it's streaming online. So you can actually cast, as you would a sports cast, a game cast, giving another life to the game through the personal eyes of that caster. And this becomes another layer to me of branding opportunity. So specific brands can invest in that caster and have that type of a show.
Anyone else? Except for Brandy? How about marketing trends? I mean, we've been talking about the new trends, going for games. Do you see any other trends other than the ones that we've mentioned, other than cloud, other than 5G, rise of potentially that comeback of VR, AR, AI? Anyone see any new trends up and coming?
Well, first, I think the idea that esports venues are being built, that there are actually creating stadiums around the sports, is not only an incredible opportunity for branding, but when you think about it, that says something about the longevity of this endeavor. I think it's just going to be a fantastic thing to watch grow.
Yeah, and some of the venues are actually being sponsored by big brands, right? So I've seen some venues going up in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, etc. Any other new trends for the audience here that anybody has seen? Yeah, Ronnie.
I think in the mobile scene, one of the trends that you see now is there are many games being made, and the players are very seasoned to all the games being made. There's billions of apps. So what happened is that IP and franchise sort of start to come in. So you will see more games that are built more with an IP, it's a franchise, and then people will actually use franchise to populate the genres. They will use it to explore. Like example, SNK play more, they use the King of Fighters to put it into like a fighting game, but not like a fighting, but like use the street brawling kind of genre. So they are exploring. And then similarly, my side, I've been launching role-playing games with Square Enix, Final Fantasy, so I'm also using a bit of IP. Then in terms of collaboration, you will see that the lines are a bit blurry. So what I mean by the lines are blurry is movies, comics come into games, and games may go into movies or comics. So you see a transfer of how things are. So you do not see people say, I will come in with a fresh game. Maybe they do, but this will not be as much as what I saw in 2012. So in today's context, there's a bit of shift. So for bigger companies, they will generally say, okay, maybe I get an IP, I go in and see what happens, because games are more expensive to make. It's not like back then. So now it's pretty expensive to make a mobile game. So this is what I see some of the trends that are coming up in terms of gaming content.
So kind of like the Hunger Game of games.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, something else I've noticed recently is that social casino as a genre is becoming a lot more mainstream. So they were traditionally on the fringes, but now you're starting to see them appearing in, being featured in stores where they weren't normally featured. So in terms of top grossing games, these games were normally always in the top 20, but always kept out of the featuring in the stores and whatnot. But now the platform holders are quietly letting them in, and the social casino company is going to become a lot more powerful. They're already making inroads into non-social casino genres as well, so there's going to be quite an interesting crossover there. The thing that we identified as well, that we're looking at the market, clearly, there's a regulation risk for game developers. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the news that came out of the UK this week around loot boxes, but there's also going to have to be ways that we think about how we design games. Now, obviously, if you're developing competitive games, it's not really as much of an issue. Right. But even in the ways that we wrap and market to children, and you talk about branding there, so if it's a child-friendly brand, then there's potentially a regulation risk also tied to the game design. So these are things that we're also thinking about right now. And this is going to be a much, I know people think it's a big issue now, but it's going to be a much bigger issue in 12 months' time.
Okay. All right, cool.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I want to share a bit more on the esports ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are still in a very early stage of the esports industry. I mean, for now, what we see is the industry is quite lack of talents and experience. I mean, in the event organizing, the marketing and the production, the storytelling, the whole industry maybe is a bit better in Korea, China, or in the US. As in most areas, the industry is quite just in the childhood. I mean, so everything is new.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to give more patience to the industry. The key important thing is the gamers' passion is already there. So the gamers are crazy for this business model. So what we are looking for is we are looking for some talents and experience from the traditional industry. I mean, from the TV, from the media, and the traditional sports industry. I think in the coming 5 or 10 years, if there is a good integration, I mean, between the experience and the industry, I mean, the esports will go pretty well. Thank you.
Nice. Well, I think we still have a little bit of time, so I was talking to the organizers before that we could take some questions from the audience if we had some extra time. So if there's any questions from the audience for any of the panelists here, we've got a really amazing list of panelists here that we can ask questions to. So if you don't mind, if you want to have a question, please raise your hand and we can bring a mic over to you.
Maybe I can start the first question.
Sure?
For you, though. Because I think you asked earlier about the impact of 5G on mobile games.
Yeah.
Which I think Ronnie kind of mentioned. But I think the impact of 5G on console and PC games could also be huge. I just wonder, like, what Activision and Blizzard kind of views on kind of like bringing your traditional console titles to the mobile space?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we have always been exploring because of the fact that in the past, mobile titles, as you know, don't necessarily have the proper conditions for gameplay that you have, a very robust type of gameplay that you have specifically on PC, like for a lot of our titles that are in the Blizzard universe, like Diablo, StarCraft, Overwatch, it's an example. And with 5G, it gives us an opportunity to then bridge that gap and bring players and those IPs over to the mobile platform and potentially have some opportunities for them to also compete against or play against other players on different platforms.
Right.
Yeah.
I once heard someone describe it as, well, we don't have transparent thumbs. Right. So they're always taking up some piece of the UX.
Of the UX of the screen. So it's different, right? The user experience is quite different, right? Exactly. But then also I think the thing that we see in the future with 5G is the opportunity for cross-play, because right now there is not a lot of cross-play. You have players that play PC games only on PC against other people on PCs, but they have friends that are console gamers. And right now there's very few games, none that I can really name, that you can play against each other.
Guess Fortnite does that, right?
Except Fortnite. Yeah, Fortnite is one of those experiences, right? Exactly. So Fortnite is probably one of the first where you have the ability to play Fortnite, but my personal opinion is it's a lackluster experience on the mobile platform. But then again, it's just a start, right? And then friends can play against each other. So that's something that we see that 5G will be able to provide us too.
You talked about trends earlier, right? So I think one of the trends that I'll see is that more companies going to do the Fortnite route, where if they can try to go around Google Play or App Store to save that 30%, I think they would do it. So I think more games is going to be multi-platforms, and if they have a chance to kind of like increase their own margins by paying less tax by the platform, I think they would do it.
Yeah. It depends on how much value Google or Apple will really provide to you, right? Yeah. So any questions from the audience? Okay. I think
they're just willing.
They just want to get a drink.
Party, right?
Yeah, they want to go to a YouTube party. We got us back on time, though. I think we were running a little over. So please, a round of applause for the panelists today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I think it was a fantastic overview into the future of esports.
All right, thank you.